what are my top 3 tips for people starting up the new venture or wanting to, or are really entrepreneurs themselves running their own businesses? Well, I think the best advice, the best tip is always based on personal experience. There's really not much value talking about academically what are the top 3 things to look at, because you can go to the books and look at it, right? So for me, with all the businesses and companies that we're investing in and looking at or have been involved with, the 3 tips, and they are not in any one particular order. First one is always, again, be very clear why you're doing this. I cannot overemphasize how important that is, because the challenges and the problems will come. It's never a question of if, it's a question of when. If it is, and it's not going to be at the next fundraising round. It's not going to be just that you have a new competitor coming onto the market that might wipe your business out. So it's never a question of if, it's a question of when. And the only one guiding light or beacon you will have is why you're doing this. If your purpose as an entrepreneur like mine, mine was to go out there and save lives. I could be a doctor doing that, a medical doctor doing that, or I could be an entrepreneur, launching these life-saving devices and services. And I chose the latter, which is why to date I have spun out as many as 15, 16 companies, and I'll keep doing it because that's what I believe in. And investors will tell you, being in the biotech and healthcare space is really painful. You're better off taking the dollar you want to invest and taking it to the stock market, or taking it to a blue chip stock, something, or putting it in properties. That's more, risk-free or lower risk, and you get better return. But I keep doing it, and I have this ability to convince investors to come along for that adventure, only because they also believe it. And when you believe it, you can convey, you can sell that belief. But more importantly, it helps you to be consistent in how you look at your venture. Ventures go through challenging times. It may mean you pivot, it may mean you keep at it, it may mean that you forget the whole thing, but you take that as a learning point all the time. And if you're clear about your purpose, that becomes part of the building stone that you put onto that foundation. Excuse me. So that's why it's important. So that's the first tip. Second tip, as an entrepreneur, always find the right people to work with. It comes back to your earlier question about, is it the team or is it the idea? Often than not, you find that it's important who you work with and how you interact with them. Some of the businesses that failed, that didn't make it, was never about the idea. It was always about the people, right? If you see things that are not aligned, meaning if partners have different strategic direction, that is one sure way of pulling that company apart. If you find that you have team members that are dishonest, they're not going to be able to build the kind of company that you want to build, right? They will be building it for a different purpose. Yeah. So that's the second tip. Find the right people and take time to know who they are. There's no amount of discussion or reading their resumes or bio that's going to give you comfort in terms of who they are. It's a function of time, it's a function of the opportunity to observe them and for them to observe you and to work with you. So that would be my second tip. The last thought I have about this question is really one about thinking ahead of, what is the end point to your earlier question. What is the exit, so to speak? And exit doesn't mean lots of money in the pocket. The exit just means at what end point do you want to see this? And then working backwards. not just from a strategy standpoint, but also personally for the entrepreneur. I think most of us recognize that we're good in some things, but we're never good in all things. So while as an entrepreneur, you're good in starting up a business, but you may not be the best person to be running it and scaling it. You might want to think about bringing in a professional CEO to run that part of the growth and know it and be courageous enough and for some of us manage our ego in such a way that we can let go. So having that endpoint is important, and understanding at what point, your involvement and your contribution starts and ends. I think that's also important. I haven't seen that many entrepreneurs that are great founders and eventually become great CEOs for public companies, because they tend to be different people with different skills and different personalities. So having that endpoint is important because then you can work backwards and curate milestones and curate things, activities for the company or for the venture to achieve, and in the longer run, build exactly the kind of company that you want to build.